Picture this. Section 214 of a sold-out arena. 20,000 people screaming lyrics to Fix You by Coldplay, and there is a man in the crowd who is not watching the stage. He is watching his wife through binoculars as she cries in another man's arms. That man is his best friend since college. The man who was his best man at his wedding. The man he has considered a brother for 15 years. And in this moment, as Chris Martin's voice echoes through the stadium singing about lights guiding you home, this man realizes that he might have just destroyed his entire life because he could not trust the two people who never gave him a real reason not to. His name is Ethan Ripley. He is 34 years old. A software engineer who believed he had everything figured out. A beautiful wife named Caroline who he has been married to for 6 years. A best friend named Jake who has been in his life since they were college roommates at 19. 3 months ago, Ethan bought 2 tickets to see Coldplay in concert. Caroline's favorite band. The band they saw on their very first date 9 years ago. Those tickets were supposed to be for their anniversary. They were supposed to be romantic. They were supposed to remind them of who they were when they first fell in love, back when everything was simple and uncomplicated and neither of them had baggage weighing them down. But Ethan did not go to that concert with his wife. Instead, he turned those tickets into a test. A trap. An elaborate psychological experiment designed to confirm his worst fears. That the woman he loved and the friend he trusted were betraying him behind his back. And on that night, in that arena, watching them through binoculars like some kind of deranged private investigator, he got his answer. Just not the answer he expected. Not even close. Before we get into what happened that night, and trust me, what happened will make you question everything you think you know about trust, loyalty, and whether paranoia is just pattern recognition or self-fulfilling prophecy, you need to understand something. This is not just Ethan's story. This is a story about what happens when childhood trauma metastasizes into adult relationships. It is about what happens when you inherit your parents' mistakes and spend 30 years paying interest on their emotional debts. It is about the razor-thin line between protecting yourself and destroying the very thing you are trying to protect. If you have ever looked through your partner's phone, even just once, even just for a second, even though you felt guilty about it, this story is for you. If you have ever felt that sick twist in your stomach when your partner laughs too hard at someone else's joke, or mentions a coworker's name just a few too many times, or seems distant in a way you cannot quite articulate but can definitely feel, this story is for you. If you have ever wondered whether you are being cautious or catastrophizing, whether you are protecting yourself or creating the very disaster you are afraid of, this story is for you. And if you have ever been on the other side of that suspicion, if you have ever been faithful and true and loyal while someone you loved treated you like a criminal, interrogated you like a suspect, tested you like you were some kind of experiment, this story is definitely for you. Because what you are about to hear is not just about what Ethan did. It is about what it cost. And whether that cost was worth paying. Spoiler alert. It almost was not. Over the next 9 parts of this story, you are going to go through every excruciating detail of how Ethan planned and executed the perfect test of his wife's loyalty. You are going to see exactly what made him suspicious in the first place. The text messages he glimpsed. The inside jokes he was not part of. The way Caroline's face lit up when Jake's name appeared on her phone screen in a way it had not lit up for Ethan in months. You are going to watch him hire a private investigator, consult a divorce attorney, move money into separate accounts, and document every suspicious interaction like he was building a legal case. You are going to be there with him on concert night, watching through those binoculars as his worst fears seemed to materialize right before his eyes. You are going to feel what he felt when he saw Jake's arm around Caroline's shoulders. When he watched her cry into his chest during their wedding song. When they embraced in a way that looked, from his vantage point in Section 214, like everything he was afraid of confirmed. But you are also going to experience the phone call that changed everything. The emergency that forced him to reveal he had been there all along, watching them, spying on them like some kind of psychopath. You are going to be in the hospital waiting room when the truth started unraveling. Not the truth about them, but the truth about him. About what he had actually been seeing versus what he had been projecting. About the difference between evidence and interpretation. And here is what this story promises. By the end, you will not be able to definitively say whether what Ethan did was justified or unforgivable. You are going to argue with yourself. Some of you will defend him in the comments. Some of you will eviscerate him. Some of you will say, I would have done the same thing. Others will say, I would have left him immediately. And that is exactly the point. Because this is not a simple story with a clear villain and a clear victim. This is a story about how hurt people, how fear can disguise itself as wisdom, and how sometimes the person you need to protect your loved ones from is yourself. So here are the questions this story will force you to answer. When does healthy caution become toxic paranoia? When does protecting your heart become sabotaging your happiness? If you set a trap and someone falls into it, who is really to blame? Them for failing the test, or you for testing them in the first place? And here is the biggest question of all. If you discovered that your partner had been planning an elaborate romantic gesture for months, coordinating with your best friend to pull off the surprise of a lifetime, and you mistook all that love and effort for betrayal and conspiracy, could you ever forgive yourself? Because that is what this story is really about. Not about whether Caroline was cheating with Jake. Not even about whether Ethan's suspicions were reasonable given the evidence he thought he had. This story is about what happened when he got everything wrong, hurt everyone who loved him, and had to figure out whether a man who destroys everything he touches out of fear deserves a second chance to hold something precious. One more thing before we begin. Caroline was 3 months pregnant during that concert. She had not told Ethan yet. She was planning to tell him that night, with Jake's help, as part of the surprise Ethan ruined with his paranoia. Their daughter, yes, they had her, though whether Ethan deserved to be in the delivery room is still something he and Caroline debate, is 6 months old now. Her name is Hope. And if you are wondering whether that is too on the nose, too symbolic, too perfectly ironic given everything that happened, you are right. It is. But sometimes life hands you metaphors so obvious you cannot ignore them. So before we dive in, where are you watching this from? Drop your location in the comments. Let us know how far this story travels, how many people around the world are wrestling with the same questions about trust and fear that nearly destroyed Ethan. And hey, how are you doing today? Really? Take a second and check in with yourself. Are you okay? Are you happy? Are you trusting the people you love, or are you testing them in ways they do not even know about? And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is long, it is complex, and it is going to take all 9 parts to get through it. Do not miss a single piece. Do not get halfway through and lose the thread. This story deserves to be heard in its entirety. Your future self will thank you for subscribing. Trust me on that. It is probably the only thing you should trust me on. Alright, deep breath. Let us begin. This is the story of how Ethan Ripley tested his wife's loyalty, failed spectacularly, and learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is not holding on tighter. It is learning when to let go of the fear that has been holding you hostage your entire life. Part 1 starts right now. And I promise you, you will not see any of this coming. Ethan Ripley sat at his desk in the home office, the glow of 3 monitors casting blue light across his face at 2 in the morning. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, but he was not coding. He was staring at a folder on his desktop labeled Tax Documents 2023. Inside that folder was not a single tax document. Inside were screenshots. 47 of them. Text messages between his wife Caroline and his best friend Jake, captured over the last 8 weeks through means he was not proud of but could not bring himself to regret. The apartment around him was silent except for the hum of his computer and the occasional car passing on the street below. Caroline was asleep in their bedroom, her phone charging on the nightstand, face down the way she always kept it now. That was new. 6 months ago, she left it face up. 6 months ago, she did not flinch when Ethan walked past while she was texting. 6 months ago, she laughed at his jokes with the same enthusiasm she now reserved for Jake's messages. Ethan opened the folder. His stomach twisted the way it did every time, a sick combination of dread and vindication. The first screenshot was from 6 weeks ago. Jake asking Caroline if she wanted to grab coffee. Innocent enough. The second one, her response. I would love that. Just us? The way she phrased it. Just us. Like she wanted to make sure Ethan would not be there. Like she was carving out time specifically to be alone with Jake. He scrolled through more. Inside jokes he did not understand. References to conversations he was not part of. Jake sending her a meme at 11 at night with the caption "This is so you," followed by 3 crying laughing emojis. Caroline responding immediately even though she had told Ethan she was too tired to watch a movie with him that same night. Too tired for her husband, but energy to spare for his best friend. Ethan's jaw clenched. He clicked to another screenshot. This one from 3 weeks ago. Caroline texting Jake about the CrossFit gym they both attended now, a gym Ethan had suggested they all try together, but that he had stopped going to after the first month because of a work deadline. Apparently Caroline and Jake had not stopped. Great session today, Caroline had written. You push me harder than anyone else. The phrase sat in Ethan's chest like a stone. You push me harder than anyone else. What did that mean? Was it about the workout, or was it code for something else? He knew he was spiraling. His therapist, Dr. Chin, had used that exact word last week during their session. You are spiraling, Ethan. You are taking ambiguous evidence and constructing a narrative that confirms your fears rather than challenging them. But Dr. Chin did not see these messages. Dr. Chin did not watch Caroline's face light up when Jake's name appeared on her screen. Dr. Chin did not know what it felt like to be in a marriage where you were slowly becoming a ghost in your own home. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you subscribed yet? If you are feeling this story, if you are already wondering what happens next, do not be shy. Hit that button. Join the family. I promise, you will want to see how this plays out. Go ahead. I will wait. Ethan closed the folder and opened a different one. This one was labeled concert. Inside were PDFs of Coldplay tickets. 2 of them. Section 108, row F, seats 12 and 13. He had bought them 3 months ago for $600. A splurge he had justified because it was their anniversary month and because Coldplay was the band that had been playing in that little bar in Portland 9 years ago when he first worked up the courage to ask Caroline to dance. She had said yes. She had leaned into him during Fix You, her head on his shoulder, and whispered that she could stay in that moment forever. Now those tickets sat in his drawer at work, and he had set a trap with them. 2 weeks ago, over dinner, he had pulled them out with what he hoped was convincing enthusiasm. Surprise, he had said. Coldplay. Next month. Us. Caroline's eyes had widened, genuine joy spreading across her face for the first time in weeks. Ethan, oh my God. Really? This is incredible. And then he had delivered the line he had been rehearsing. Only thing is, work is sending me to that conference in Austin that weekend. I completely forgot when I bought these. I can only make one of the 2 nights they are playing, and I already committed to client dinners on the first night. So you should take the Friday tickets, bring someone who would really appreciate it. Caroline had hesitated. Just for a second, but Ethan had seen it. The mental calculation happening behind her eyes. Take Amanda, he had suggested, naming her best friend. Or your sister. Whoever you want. He had watched her carefully, searching for the truth in her micro-expressions. She had smiled, kissed his cheek, and said, "That is so thoughtful. Let me think about who would enjoy it most." 3 days later, he had his answer. He came home from work to find Caroline on the phone in the kitchen, her back to him, voice animated in a way it rarely was anymore. "No, Ethan cannot go," she was saying. "Yeah, I know you love them too. Okay, if you're sure. This will be so fun." When she hung up and turned around, she startled slightly at seeing him there. "Oh, hey," she said. "I did not hear you come in." Who was that? Ethan had asked, though he already knew. The tone, the energy, the way she had said, "I know you love them too." It was Jake. It had to be Jake. Caroline confirmed it with a smile that looked almost apologetic. "I asked Jake if he wanted to use the extra ticket. I hope that is okay. He has been going through a rough time with his breakup, and I thought it might cheer him up." The rough breakup. Jake had been seeing someone casually for 3 months who decided she wanted something more serious. He had been mildly disappointed for approximately 1 week before moving on. But Caroline was framing it like Jake was devastated, like he needed emotional support that apparently only a concert with a married woman could provide. Of course, Ethan had said, forcing warmth into his voice. That is really kind of you. Jake will love it. And he had meant it, in a way. Jake would love it. The question was why, and what would happen when Ethan was not around. That night, Ethan had booked his own ticket. Section 214. Upper level, across the arena from where Caroline and Jake would be sitting. He would be there, watching. Not to catch them doing something explicitly wrong, he told himself. Just to observe. To see how they interacted when they thought no one was looking. To confirm or deny the sick feeling that had been growing in his gut for 2 months. The feeling that his wife and his best friend were building something behind his back. Something that did not include him. Something that might eventually replace him entirely. Now, sitting at his desk at 2 in the morning, Ethan opened one final document. It was a journal entry he had found last week, left open on Caroline's laptop when she had gone to take a shower. He had not been snooping. The laptop was on the kitchen counter. The document was right there on the screen. He had only meant to close it so he could use the computer to check his email, but then he saw his name, and he could not stop himself from reading. The entry was dated 3 weeks ago. I feel alive again, it said. Is this wrong? Ethan is safe, predictable. But D makes me feel like I did at 25. God, what am I thinking? D, she had written D. Not a full name, just an initial. But Ethan knew. Derek was Jake's middle name. Jake Derek Morrison. Caroline was writing about Jake in her journal, comparing him to Ethan, saying that Jake made her feel alive in ways Ethan apparently no longer could. Safe and predictable. That was how she saw him now. The man who paid the mortgage and remembered to buy her favorite coffee and asked about her day every evening like clockwork. Safe. Predictable. Boring. Ethan had photographed the entry with his phone before closing the laptop. He looked at that photo now, the words burning into his retinas. The concert was in 6 days. In 6 days, he would know the truth. In 6 days, he would sit in section 214 with binoculars he had already purchased from Amazon, and he would watch his wife and his best friend. And he would finally have the evidence he needed to justify the paranoia that was slowly consuming him from the inside out. Or he would discover he was wrong. That possibility terrified him almost as much as being right. Because if he was wrong, if he was manufacturing betrayal out of innocent friendship and his own insecurity, then he was not the victim in this story. He was the villain. And he did not know if his marriage could survive him being the villain. The concert was in 6 days. Ethan saved his documents, cleared his browser history out of habit, and went to bed next to his wife, careful not to wake her, wondering if she was dreaming about someone else. Ethan Ripley was 12 years old when he learned that love was a minefield and trust was a luxury only fools could afford. He came home from school on a Tuesday afternoon, let himself in with the key he wore on a shoelace around his neck, and found his mother crying at the kitchen table with his father standing over her, face red with a rage Ethan had never seen before. Your uncle, his father had said, voice shaking. Your own brother. How long? How long have you been sleeping with him? Ethan had frozen in the doorway, backpack still on his shoulders, unable to process what he was hearing. His mother looked up at him with eyes that were already begging for forgiveness, and in that moment, Ethan understood that the family he had known was ending. His father moved out that week. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. His uncle stopped coming to Thanksgiving. His mother tried to explain, tried to say that sometimes adults made mistakes, that love was complicated, that Ethan would understand when he was older. But Ethan did not want to understand. He wanted to go back to before, when he believed that his parents loved each other, when he thought that marriage meant forever, when he did not know that the people you trusted most could destroy you without warning. 22 years later, Ethan still carried that afternoon with him like a scar. It shaped how he loved Caroline, how he monitored for signs of decay in their relationship, how he could not ever fully relax into happiness because he was always waiting for the betrayal he had learned was inevitable. Dr. Chin called it hypervigilance. Ethan called it pattern recognition. His mother had cheated with someone close to the family, someone his father had trusted completely. Now Caroline was spending more and more time with Jake, someone Ethan had trusted completely, and the pattern was repeating itself like a curse he could not break. Caroline Hayes had not always been distant. When Ethan met her 7 years ago at a tech industry mixer, she had been the one to approach him, drawn to his quiet intensity in a room full of loud extroverts. She was a marketing director, brilliant and ambitious, with a laugh that made everyone around her want to earn it. She had pursued Ethan with a confidence that both terrified and thrilled him. On their 3rd date, she told him she knew he was the one. On their 1st anniversary, she proposed to him, getting down on one knee in the same Portland bar where they had first danced, saying she did not want to wait for tradition when she knew what she wanted. The early years of their marriage had been easy in the way that made Ethan nervous, like happiness was a debt he would eventually have to repay with interest. Caroline was affectionate, present, enthusiastic about their future. They talked about having kids. They looked at houses in neighborhoods with good schools. They took weekend trips and stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. Ethan kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and when it did not, he started to believe that maybe he had been wrong. Maybe his parents' marriage was the exception, not the rule. Maybe he could have this. Then, 6 months ago, something shifted. Caroline started working later, coming home exhausted and distracted. She joined CrossFit, which Ethan had supported because she said she needed an outlet for stress. She became interested in hiking, something she had never cared about before, and started going on weekend trail runs that somehow always coincided with when Jake was also hiking. The sex tapered off. Not stopped, but became less frequent, less urgent, like something she was doing out of obligation rather than desire. When Ethan asked if everything was okay, Caroline said she was just stressed about a product launch at work, that she was fine, that he worried too much. But Ethan knew what fine looked like, and this was not it. This was a woman slowly detaching, creating distance in increments small enough that she could deny they were happening. This was a woman who used to text him throughout the day with random thoughts and now went hours without responding. This was a woman who used to light up when he came home and now barely looked up from her phone. And the person she was texting more often than not was Jake. Jake Morrison had been Ethan's college roommate, randomly assigned freshman year at UCLA, and they had clicked immediately despite being opposites. Jake was the charismatic one, the athlete, the guy everyone wanted to be around. Ethan was the coder, the introvert, the one who preferred small gatherings to parties. Jake had protected Ethan from social overwhelm. Ethan had helped Jake pass his computer science requirements. They had lived together for 3 years, stayed close after graduation, and when Ethan moved to Seattle for work, Jake had followed a year later, saying he could not imagine living in a city where his best friend was not. Jake had been Ethan's best man at the wedding. He had given a toast that made everyone cry, talking about how Ethan was the most loyal person he had ever known, how Caroline was lucky to marry someone who would move mountains for the people he loved. Jake had been there when Ethan's father died 2 years ago, sitting with him in the hospital through the night, not saying much, just being present. Jake was the godfather to the child Ethan and Caroline did not have yet but had always planned for. Jake was family, which made the current situation so much worse. Because if Jake was betraying him, if Jake was sleeping with his wife or falling in love with her or even just entertaining the possibility, then Ethan had been wrong about everything. He had been wrong about his ability to judge character. He had been wrong to trust anyone. He had been wrong to believe that his life could be different from his father's. But there were signs that complicated Ethan's narrative. Jake had a pattern of short relationships, yes, but he had never pursued married women. He had never shown romantic interest in Caroline, at least not overtly. When Caroline brought up Jake in conversation, it was always in the context of friendship, of someone who got her sense of humor, who pushed her athletically, who she could talk to about things that apparently she could not talk to Ethan about anymore. Maybe that was worse. Maybe emotional intimacy was a deeper betrayal than physical attraction. Ethan's sister Jennifer thought he was losing his mind. When he had mentioned, carefully, that he was worried about Caroline spending so much time with Jake, Jennifer had shut it down immediately. "You are projecting Mom's issues onto your marriage," she had said. "Caroline is not Mom. Jake is not Uncle Ray. You need to stop looking for problems that do not exist, or you are going to create them." But Jennifer had not seen the text messages. Jennifer did not know about the journal entry. Jennifer was not living in Ethan's head, where every interaction was a puzzle he had to solve. Every explanation had a shadow explanation underneath it. Dr. Chin, the therapist Ethan had started seeing 3 months ago, had been more measured. "It is natural to feel insecure when relationship dynamics change," Dr. Chin had said. "But you have to ask yourself whether you are responding to actual evidence of betrayal or to the fear of betrayal. There is a difference between protecting yourself and sabotaging your own happiness. We need to explore why you find it so difficult to trust, even when trust has not been explicitly broken." But trust had been broken, Ethan wanted to argue. Not by Caroline or Jake, but by his mother, by his father's obliviousness, by the lesson his childhood had taught him about the unreliability of love. How was he supposed to just ignore that lesson? How was he supposed to pretend that betrayal was not always a possibility, lurking under the surface of every relationship, waiting for the right conditions to emerge? The stakes of being wrong were enormous. If Ethan confronted Caroline and Jake based on suspicion alone, if he accused them without proof, he would destroy his marriage and his oldest friendship over paranoia. Caroline would never forgive him. Jake would be devastated. Their entire social circle, built around the three of them as a unit, would fracture. Ethan would be the villain in a story where he thought he was the victim. But the stakes of being right were worse. If Caroline and Jake were betraying him, if they were building something romantic or physical behind his back, then Ethan had already lost everything that mattered. His wife, his best friend, his belief that he could be loved without conditions or expiration dates. And he would be his father, the man who had trusted too much and paid for it with decades of bitterness and loneliness. So Ethan had designed a test. The concert tickets were his scientific method, a controlled experiment to determine the truth. If Caroline chose to take Jake instead of Amanda or her sister, that was data. If they acted like more than friends at the concert, that was data. If Ethan was there, watching from a distance, documenting what he saw, then he could not be accused of paranoia. He would have evidence. He would know. Unless the knowing destroyed him anyway. Unless the test itself was the betrayal, the moment when Ethan chose suspicion over faith, surveillance over communication, control over vulnerability. Unless he was already becoming the thing he feared most, a man so afraid of being hurt that he hurt everyone around him first. The concert was in 5 days. Ethan had not told Dr. Chin about his plan. He had not told Jennifer. He had not even fully admitted to himself what he was doing, because saying it out loud would make it real, would force him to confront the fact that he was spying on his wife, that he had hired a private investigator who had found nothing incriminating but whose retainer fee was still bleeding their joint account, that he had opened a separate checking account and started moving money into it in case he needed to file for divorce. Ethan looked at the framed photo on his desk, taken on their wedding day. Caroline in her dress, Jake in his tuxedo, Ethan between them, all three of them laughing at something someone had said. They looked happy. They looked like people who would never hurt each other. But Ethan's mother and uncle had probably looked happy too, in photos taken before everything fell apart. Happiness was not a guarantee. It was not even evidence. It was just a moment, frozen in time, before the truth came out. The dinner where everything accelerated was supposed to be casual. Caroline had made reservations at the Italian place they used to go to when they were dating, back when a $60 dinner felt like a splurge they had to budget for. Now they could afford it easily, but they rarely came here anymore. Too busy, Caroline always said. Too tired after work. But tonight she had insisted, saying they needed to reconnect, that she felt like they had been ships passing in the night lately. Ethan had agreed, hopeful despite himself that maybe he was wrong about everything. Maybe this dinner was Caroline's way of resetting, of choosing him, of stepping back from whatever had been pulling her away. He wore the blue shirt she had bought him last Christmas, The one she said brought out his eyes. He made sure to be home early so they could walk to the restaurant together the way they used to. Caroline looked beautiful. She had worn a black dress that Ethan did not recognize, had done something different with her hair, and when she smiled at him across the table after they ordered, Ethan felt a surge of the old feeling, the one from before everything got complicated. Maybe this was it. Maybe they were finding their way back. The server brought their appetizer, and Caroline reached across the table to squeeze Ethan's hand. "I got you something," she said. "Close your eyes." Ethan obeyed, felt her press something into his palm. When he opened his eyes, he was holding an envelope. Inside were the Coldplay tickets, the ones he had bought 3 months ago and hidden in his desk drawer at work, the ones that were supposed to be a surprise for their anniversary. Ethan's mind raced. How did Caroline get these? He had been so careful. Then he realized, sick with understanding, that Caroline must have gone to his office, must have been looking through his things. The betrayal of that collided with the larger betrayal he suspected, creating a confusion of emotions he had to hide behind a smile. "Surprise," Caroline said, watching his face. "I know you have been stressed about work, and I thought these might be a nice reminder that we still know how to have fun together. Coldplay next month. Just us. Like old times." Ethan's prepared script evaporated. He had planned to give her these tickets tonight, to set his trap, to tell her about the fake work conference. But Caroline had found them first, had reframed them as her gift to him. He had seconds to pivot, to salvage his plan. His mouth felt dry. "This is amazing," he said, forcing enthusiasm into his voice that he almost felt. "You are amazing." But then he delivered the line anyway, the one he had rehearsed. "Only thing is, work just told me about this conference in Austin that same weekend. It is a huge client, I cannot get out of it." His heart hammered as he lied to his wife's face. "But you should still go. Take someone. Amanda would love this, or your sister." Caroline's expression flickered through several emotions too quickly for Ethan to read. Disappointment, definitely. But something else underneath it. Relief? Why would she be relieved that he could not go? "Oh," she said. "That is too bad. Are you sure you cannot reschedule the conference?" Ethan shook his head. "I already committed. But seriously, do not let the tickets go to waste. Someone should enjoy them." He watched her carefully, searching for the truth in the way she held her fork, the way she looked at her wine glass instead of at him. "Maybe I will ask around," Caroline said, and that was when Ethan knew. She was not going to ask Amanda or her sister. She already knew who she wanted to take, had probably known before this dinner even started. The tickets had been her way of testing whether Ethan would be there, and his lie about the conference had given her permission to do what she had already planned. They finished dinner making small talk about work, about the new coffee shop that opened on their block, about Jennifer's upcoming birthday. Caroline seemed lighter somehow, more animated than she had been in weeks. Ethan felt like he was watching her from underwater, everything distorted and strange. When they got home, Caroline kissed him goodnight and went to take a shower, and Ethan stood in the kitchen trying to remember how to breathe. 3 days later, Ethan came home from work earlier than usual. He had left the office at 4, telling his manager he had a dentist appointment, but really, he just needed to get out of the building before he suffocated under the weight of what he was doing. He let himself into the apartment quietly, heard Caroline's voice coming from the kitchen, animated and bright. "No, Ethan cannot go," she was saying. "Work thing." "Yeah, I know you love them too." She paused, listening to whoever was on the other end. "Okay, if you're sure. This will be so fun. We have not done something like this in forever." Ethan stood in the entryway, frozen. The "we" in that sentence hit him like a punch. "We have not done something like this in forever. Not you and I, not you and whoever she was talking to as separate entities, but we, as in a unit, as in two people who had a history of doing things together." His stomach turned over. When Caroline hung up and turned around, she startled at seeing him there. "Oh God, you scared me," she said, hand on her chest. "I did not hear you come in. How long have you been standing there?" "Just walked in," Ethan lied. "Who is that?" Caroline's smile was genuine, unguarded in a way that made everything worse. "Jake. I asked him if he wanted to use the extra Coldplay ticket." He is going through a rough time with his breakup, and I thought it might cheer him up. That is okay, right? There it was. The confirmation Ethan had been dreading and desperately needing. Of course, he said, proud of how steady his voice sounded. That is really thoughtful of you. Jake will love it. He forced himself to walk over to her, to kiss her forehead like a husband who trusted his wife, like a man who was not already planning to follow them to the concert, to watch them from across an arena with binoculars he had already purchased. "You're the best," Caroline said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "I know Jake has been struggling. It will be good for him to get out and do something fun." She pulled back to look at Ethan's face. "And hey, maybe you can use that night to relax. Order takeout, play video games, do all the stuff you never get to do when I am around." "Yeah," Ethan said. "Maybe I will." His mind was already 3 weeks in the future, already sitting in Section 214, already watching his wife and best friend in Section 108, already cataloging every touch and laugh and moment of intimacy that would prove what he already knew but could not quite accept. That night, after Caroline fell asleep, Ethan went back to his office and booked his ticket. Section 214, Row M, Seat 8. Upper level, southeast corner of the arena, with a clear sightline to Section 108 where Caroline and Jake would be sitting. He paid extra for the aisle seat in case he needed to move quickly. He added the binoculars to his Amazon cart, the expensive ones with night vision and 12x magnification, the ones marketed to birdwatchers and hunters and apparently paranoid husbands. Then Ethan did something he had been avoiding. He called the private investigator he had hired 6 weeks ago, a woman named Patricia Mills who specialized in matrimonial cases. Patricia had been following Caroline and Jake, documenting their movements, looking for evidence of an affair. So far, she had found nothing concrete. Coffee meetups that lasted 30 minutes. CrossFit sessions that were exactly that, exercise with no suspicious behavior before or after. One dinner at a Thai restaurant where they split the check and went their separate ways. "I need you at the concert," Ethan told Patricia, giving her the date and venue. "I will send you their seat numbers. I want photos, video if you can get it without being obvious. I want documentation of everything." Patricia had been quiet for a moment. "Mr. Ripley, I have to ask. Are you sure about this? In my experience, when someone needs this level of surveillance, they are either right and about to have their worst fears confirmed, or they are wrong and about to destroy their marriage with paranoia. Either way, it rarely ends well." "I need to know," Ethan had said. "That is all. I just need to know the truth." "The truth," Patricia said, "does not always set you free. Sometimes it just gives you a different prison." But Ethan had already made his choice. He had set the trap, given Caroline and Jake the rope, and now he was going to watch them either hang themselves or prove him wrong. The concert was in 2 weeks. He marked it on his calendar, a red X on a Friday night that would either validate everything he feared or reveal him to be the villain in his own story. "Before we move forward, let me ask you something real quick. Are you subscribed? If not, go ahead and fix that for me. You have come this far. You deserve to see where this goes. Hit the button. Let us keep growing together." 2 nights before the concert, Ethan could not sleep. He got up at 3 in the morning, went to his office, and did something he had been avoiding because it felt like crossing a line from which there was no return. He opened Caroline's laptop. She had left it on the kitchen counter, still logged in, the screen dark but not locked. Ethan told himself he was just going to check his email on a bigger screen than his phone. He told himself he was not snooping. But then he saw the document open in the background. A journal entry, dated 2 weeks ago, left visible like a confession Caroline had not meant to make. Ethan's hand hovered over the trackpad. He could close it, walk away, preserve whatever innocence he had left. Or he could read it, cross the line completely, and no. He read it. "I feel alive again. Is this wrong? Ethan is safe, predictable. But D makes me feel like I did at 25. God, what am I thinking?" Ethan read the words 3 times, each time hoping they would rearrange themselves into something less devastating. D. She had written D, not a full name, but Ethan knew. Jake's middle name was Derek. Jake Derek Morrison. Caroline was writing about Jake, comparing Ethan to him, finding Ethan lacking. Safe and predictable. The words Caroline used to describe the man she married, the man who worked 60-hour weeks to give her the life she wanted, the man who remembered her coffee order and her mother's birthday, and the exact way she liked to be held when she was sad. Safe and predictable. Boring. Insufficient. Not enough to make her feel alive. Ethan took a photo of the screen with his phone, saved it to his encrypted folder along with all the text message screenshots and the PI reports that said nothing and everything. Then he closed the laptop and went back to bed, lay next to his wife in the dark, and tried to remember what trust felt like before his mother taught him it was a lie people told themselves to feel safe. The concert was in 2 days. In 2 days, Ethan would have his answer. The 48 hours before the concert moved like honey, thick and slow, every minute stretching into something unbearable. Ethan went through the motions of normal life while his mind cataloged every interaction, every word, every glance between Caroline and Jake as potential evidence in a trial that only he knew was happening. Wednesday morning, Caroline asked him to help her pick an outfit for the concert, standing in front of their closet in her underwear. Holding up different options like this was a casual favor between spouses and not a knife twisting in Ethan's chest. "What do you think?" she asked, holding a blue dress against her body. "Too formal?" She did not wait for his answer before pulling out a pair of black jeans and a silk top that Ethan had never seen before. "When did she buy that?" "Or this," Caroline continued, now holding a burgundy sweater that dipped low in the front. "I want to be comfortable but still look nice, you know?" Ethan sat on the bed, watching his wife prepare to look beautiful for another man, and forced himself to play the supportive husband. "The jeans and the silk top," he said. "You will look great in that." Caroline beamed at him, kissed his cheek, said he always knew exactly what she should wear. The irony was suffocating. She was asking him to help her dress for what might be a date with his best friend, and he was complying because the alternative was revealing his hand too early. After Caroline left for work, Ethan went into the bathroom and noticed she had shaved her legs. The razor was still wet in the shower, and there was a new bottle of expensive lotion on the counter, the kind she only used for special occasions. Ethan picked it up, read the label, bergamot and vanilla, and had to grip the sink to steady himself. She had not shaved her legs for him in months. Their last 3 attempts at intimacy, she had been too tired or too stressed or just not in the mood, and Ethan had backed off because he did not want to be the kind of husband who pressured his wife. But now she was shaving for a concert with Jake. Ethan took a photo of the lotion bottle, added it to his folder of evidence that proved everything and nothing. Then he went to work and pretended to care about code reviews and sprint planning while his marriage disintegrated in slow motion. Thursday afternoon, Jake texted the group chat he had with Ethan and Caroline. "So pumped for tomorrow night," he wrote, followed by multiple music note emojis. "It has been too long since I have seen a good show. Thanks again for including me, Caroline." And Ethan, "Sorry you are going to miss it, man. That conference better be worth it." Ethan stared at his phone, trying to decode Jake's message for hidden meanings. Was that genuine sympathy or barely concealed satisfaction? Was Jake actually sorry Ethan could not come, or was he thrilled to have Caroline to himself for an entire evening? "No problem," Ethan typed back. "Have fun, you too." He added a smiley face emoji that felt like swallowing glass. Caroline responded immediately. "We will take lots of videos for you. Maybe we can all go see them next time they tour." The casual cruelty of that, the assumption that there would be a next time, that the 3 of them would still be friends after whatever was about to happen happened, made Ethan want to throw his phone across the office. That night, Caroline surprised him by bringing home dinner from his favorite Thai place, the one they used to order from every Friday when they first got married. She had remembered his exact order, pad see ew with extra broccoli, no egg. She set everything up on the coffee table, lit candles, put on the playlist they used to listen to while eating. Ethan sat across from her, chopsticks in hand, and tried to understand what was happening. "You know I love you, right?" Caroline said suddenly, looking at him with an expression he could not read. Ethan's heart stopped. This was it. This was the confession he had been dreading. She was about to tell him about Jake, about whatever had been building between them, about how she was sorry, but she could not help how she felt. Of course, Ethan managed to say, "I love you too." Caroline smiled, but it looked sad around the edges. "I know I have been distant lately. Work has been insane with the product launch, and I have not been very present. I am sorry about that. After the concert, after things calm down, let us take that trip to Napa we have been talking about. Just us. Reset everything." Ethan nodded, unable to speak. This was either Caroline trying to reconnect before she had done something unforgivable, or it was her way of easing her guilt about what she was planning to do. Either way, it felt like she was saying goodbye to something, preparing for an ending she had not told him about yet. They watched a movie that night, something Caroline picked on Netflix, and she actually cuddled against him on the couch the way she used to. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, felt her breathing slow and deepen, and wondered if this was the last time they would do this. If tomorrow night would be the night that changed everything, the night he got confirmation that his worst fears were true and his marriage was already over. Friday morning arrived with brutal sunshine. Ethan woke up before Caroline, watched her sleep for a few minutes, memorizing the curve of her face in case this was one of the last mornings he got to see it without anger or betrayal clouding the view. She looked peaceful, beautiful, completely unaware that her husband was about to spend the evening spying on her from across a concert venue with binoculars and a private investigator on standby. "Ethan," Caroline murmured, still half asleep. "What time is it?" "Early," he said. "Go back to sleep." "I am going for a run." He did not actually go for a run. He sat in his car in the parking garage of their building and called his sister Jennifer, needing to hear a voice that was not his own, that was not telling him he was losing his mind. "You are really going through with this," Jennifer said when he told her about tonight. "The surveillance, the binoculars, all of it." "I have to know," Ethan said. "I cannot live like this anymore, wondering, suspecting. I need proof one way or the other." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "What if you are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, Ethan? What if you treat Caroline like a cheater and she becomes one because you have already decided that is who she is? Have you thought about that?" Ethan had thought about it. He had thought about little else for weeks. But he could not stop now. He was too far in, had invested too much time and money and emotional energy into this plan. "I just need tonight," he told Jennifer. "After tonight, I will know. And then I can figure out what to do." "You are my brother and I love you," Jennifer said. "But you are scaring me. This is not healthy. This is not how you save a marriage. This is how you end one." After he hung up, Ethan sat in his car for another 20 minutes, giving himself one last chance to call it off, to go back upstairs and tell Caroline the truth. "I am not going to a conference. I am going to the concert too. I have been suspicious and paranoid and I need help. Let us go to couples therapy. Let us fix this before it is unfixed forever." But he did not go back upstairs. He went to his office, told everyone he was leaving early for his flight to Austin, and spent the afternoon in a coffee shop across from the concert venue, watching people arrive for the afternoon soundcheck, imagining what tonight would bring. At 5 o'clock, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Getting ready now. Jake is picking me up at 6. I will text you later. Love you." She added a heart emoji that Ethan stared at for a full minute, trying to determine if it was genuine or obligatory, affection or guilt. He texted back, "Have an amazing time. You deserve it." Then he added his own heart emoji, a lie rendered in digital iconography. At 5:30, Ethan drove back to his building and parked where he could see the main entrance. He had told Caroline he was already at the airport, already through security, already committed to the fabricated conference that was his alibi. Instead, he was here, binoculars on the passenger seat, camera charged and ready, waiting to watch his best friend pick up his wife for what might be a date disguised as a concert. Jake's car pulled up at 6 on the dot. Ethan watched through the binoculars as Jake got out, walked to the passenger side, and waited. 2 minutes later, Caroline emerged from the building in the outfit Ethan had helped her pick, her hair styled in loose waves, her face lit with excitement that Ethan had not seen directed at anything involving him in months. Jake opened the car door for her. Not unusual. Jake was always chivalrous, had been raised by a Southern mother who taught him manners. But then Jake's hand went to Caroline's lower back as she slid into the seat, a brief touch that lasted maybe 2 seconds, but felt, to Ethan watching from 50 feet away, like a brand. That was not a friend touch. That was intimate. That was claiming. Ethan's hands shook so hard he nearly dropped the binoculars. He watched Jake walk around to the driver's side, watched him say something that made Caroline laugh before he even got in the car, watched them pull away from the curb with Caroline's head already turned toward Jake, already engaged in conversation that looked animated and comfortable and easy in a way that conversation with Ethan had not been easy in months. Ethan waited 15 minutes, then followed. He knew where they were going. The arena was only 20 minutes away. His ticket was already on his phone, section 214, row M, seat 8. Patricia, the private investigator, was already inside, positioned near section 108, ready to document whatever needed documenting. Everything was in place. The trap was set. Tonight, Ethan would get his answers. He just was not sure anymore if he wanted them. Traffic was lighter than expected. Ethan arrived at the arena at 6:40, parked in the lot across the street where he was less likely to be seen, and waited until 7:15 before heading inside. He did not want to risk running into Caroline and Jake in the concourse, did not want to have to explain why he was here when he was supposed to be in Austin at a conference that did not exist. The arena was already packed, the energy electric with anticipation. Ethan made his way to section 214, climbed the stairs to row M, and took his seat. From here, he had a perfect view of section 108. He pulled out the binoculars, adjusted the focus, and found them immediately. Caroline and Jake were in row F, seats 12 and 13, exactly where they were supposed to be. They were laughing about something, heads close together, and Ethan felt his stomach turn over. He was really doing this. He was really sitting in an arena with 20,000 people, spying on his wife with binoculars like some kind of deranged stalker, looking for proof that she was betraying him. The lights dimmed. The crowd roared. Qley took the stage. And Ethan Ripley, husband and friend and architect of his own destruction, watched through binoculars as his entire life began to unravel. The arena exploded with sound as Qley launched into yellow, the opening chords triggering a wave of screams and raised phones capturing the moment. Ethan barely heard it. Through the binoculars, his entire world had narrowed to row F, seats 12 and 13, where Caroline and Jake stood side by side, singing along with 20,000 other people, but somehow appearing separate from the crowd, existing in their own bubble of intimacy that made Ethan's chest constrict. Caroline's face was radiant in a way Ethan had not seen in months. Pure joy, uninhibited and bright, her mouth forming the lyrics while her body swayed to the music. Jake leaned close to her ear, said something Ethan could not hear, and Caroline threw her head back laughing, the kind of full-body laugh she used to give Ethan back when he could still make her happy. The sight of it was a knife between his ribs, sharp and precise. During The Scientist, the song slowed, and Ethan watched as Jake's arm went around Caroline's shoulders. A casual gesture between friends, maybe. Or maybe not. Caroline did not pull away. She leaned into it slightly, just enough that Ethan could see through the binoculars, just enough to confirm that this was comfortable for her, familiar, wanted. Ethan's hands trembled so violently he had to lower the binoculars and take several deep breaths before he could look again. Settle in, he told himself. Get comfortable. And if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that. You are safe here with this story. But I need you to stick around to see what happens next. Hit that button for me. The concert continued, song after song, and Ethan documented it all. Jake's hand on Caroline's back during Adventure of a Lifetime. Caroline showing Jake something on her phone during a slower song, both of them looking at the screen together, faces close. The way they moved in sync, like they had done this before, like they had their own rhythm that did not include Ethan. Every observation was another brick in the wall of evidence Ethan was building, another justification for the paranoia that had consumed the last 3 months of his life. Then came Fix You and everything shifted. The opening piano notes filled the arena, and the crowd went quiet in that collective breath before a beloved song. Ethan watched Caroline turn to Jake, watched her mouth moving, saying something. Jake nodded, pulled out his phone. Caroline pulled out hers. They were recording, Ethan thought. Recording this moment like it meant something, like they wanted to remember it. But then Caroline's expression changed. The joy drained from her face, replaced by something that looked like shock. She stared at her phone, then looked at Jake with eyes that were suddenly brimming with tears. Jake said something, his face serious now, concerned. Caroline shook her head, and then she was crying, really crying, and Jake pulled her into his chest, wrapping both arms around her while Chris Martin sang about tears streaming down your face. Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it. This was the moment. Jake comforting Caroline, Caroline seeking comfort from Jake, the embrace lasting through the entire bridge of the song, intimate and close in a way that left no room for misinterpretation. Ethan felt sick. He had been right. He had been right all along, and the confirmation felt like drowning. But something was wrong. Caroline was not crying the way someone cried during a romantic moment. This was different. This was distress, shock, something that looked almost like grief. And Jake was not holding her the way a lover held someone. He was holding her the way you held someone who had just received terrible news. Ethan fumbled for his phone, his mind racing. He was missing something. The context was wrong. He zoomed in with his binoculars, trying to see Caroline's phone screen, trying to understand what had triggered this reaction. But the angle was wrong, the distance too great. Then Caroline showed Jake her phone again, held it up so he could see clearly. Both of their faces transformed, the grief intensifying. Jake said something urgent, and Caroline nodded, and they were moving now, pushing past people in their row, heading for the aisle, clearly leaving. Ethan stood up, panic overriding caution. Where were they going? What had happened? He abandoned his seat, pushed through the crowd toward the stairs, lost sight of them in the mass of people. His phone was in his hand when it started buzzing, a group chat explosion that made his screen light up with notification after notification. The group chat with Caroline, Jake, and Jennifer. Where are you? Ethan, call now. It is an emergency. Mom collapsed. Memorial Hospital. Ethan stopped in the middle of the concourse, people flowing around him like water around a stone. His mother. His mother had collapsed. The woman who had destroyed his childhood with her affair, who had taught him that love was unreliable and trust was for fools, might be dying. And he was here, at a concert he was not supposed to be at, spying on his wife who had just received this news and was now rushing to the hospital while Ethan stood frozen like an idiot with binoculars around his neck. He called Jennifer, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped the phone. Where are you? Jennifer sobbed. Mom is in the ICU. They think it is a stroke. You need to get here now. I am coming, Ethan said, his voice hollow. I am coming right now. Where are you? Jennifer repeated. Are not you supposed to be in Austin? The lie he had built, the elaborate fiction of the conference, came crashing down around him. I am in Seattle, Ethan admitted. I will explain later. Which hospital? Memorial. ICU waiting room. Ethan, hurry. He hung up and stood there for another moment, trying to process what was happening. His mother was dying. His wife knew his mother was dying. His wife was on her way to the hospital while Ethan was here, caught in his own trap, exposed in his own lie. He had to call Caroline. He had to tell her where he really was. He had to confess everything. His phone buzzed with a text from Patricia Mills, the private investigator. Your wife and the male subject just left the venue in a hurry. Appeared distressed. Do you want me to continue surveillance? Ethan typed back with numb fingers. No. Stop. Send me whatever you have. I am done. He called Caroline. She answered on the first ring, her voice thick with tears and something else. Something that might have been anger or might have been shock. Ethan, where are you? Did Jennifer reach you? It is your mom. I know, Ethan said. I am on my way to the hospital now. There was a pause, brief but loaded with a weight that Ethan could feel through the phone. Where are you coming from? Caroline asked, her voice suddenly careful. Are not you in Austin? Ethan closed his eyes. This was it. The moment where everything either broke completely or began the painful process of being rebuilt. "I am in Seattle," he said. "I have been in Seattle the whole time." The silence on the other end stretched for what felt like hours. When Caroline spoke again, her voice was barely recognizable. "You have been here the whole time. You have been in Seattle. Well, I thought you were at a conference." "Yes," Ethan said. "Were you at the concert?" Caroline asked, and Ethan could hear her putting the pieces together, could hear the moment she understood what he had done. "Were you there, Ethan? Were you watching us?" "Yes," he whispered. The sound Caroline made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. "Oh my God. Oh my God, Ethan. Your mother is in the hospital, possibly dying, and you were spying on me at a concert. What is wrong with you?" "I can explain," Ethan started, but Caroline cut him off. "We are leaving right now to go to Memorial. Meet us at the hospital. We will talk about this later. Right now, your mother needs you." "But Ethan, I swear to God, we will talk about this." She hung up. Ethan stood in the concourse of the arena, surrounded by people enjoying a concert he had ruined for himself, and had to lean against a wall to keep from collapsing. He had been caught. Not caught Caroline and Jake doing anything wrong, but caught in his own deception, his own paranoia, his own inability to trust the people who loved him. His phone buzzed again. A text from Jake this time. "Dude, Sophia told me what you did. I am hurt you did not trust me, but I get it. Your mom needs you now. We can deal with our shit later. But you should know, tonight was not what you thought." Ethan stared at that last sentence. Tonight was not what you thought. What did that mean? What had he been watching if not what he thought he was watching? But there was no time to figure it out now. His mother was in the ICU. His wife knew he had been lying to her for weeks. His best friend knew he had been surveilling them like criminals. Everything was broken, and Ethan had no one to blame but himself. He made his way to the parking garage, got in his car, and drove to Memorial Hospital with his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white. The concert had not given him the answers he expected. It had not confirmed his suspicions or validated his paranoia. Instead, it had revealed something much worse. That he was capable of hurting the people he loved in his desperate attempt to protect himself from being hurt. That he had become his father, suspicious and controlling and willing to destroy everything rather than risk being the fool. The hospital parking lot was nearly full. Ethan found a spot in the back, turned off the engine, and sat in the dark trying to figure out how to walk into that ICU waiting room and face Caroline and Jake and Jennifer. How to explain what he had done and why. How to defend the indefensible. His phone buzzed one more time. Another text from Jake. "That night Sophia showed me her phone during the concert. She was showing me something important. Something you should have known about. Something that changes everything. But you will have to ask her about it. I am not going to be the one to tell you." Ethan's blood ran cold. Something important. Something he should have known about. Something that changes everything. The journal entry flashed through his mind. "I feel alive again. Is this wrong? But D makes me feel like I did at 25. What if D did not mean Derek? What if he had been wrong about everything from the very beginning?" There was only one way to find out. Ethan got out of his car and walked toward the hospital entrance, toward the ICU waiting room where his wife and best friend and sister were waiting, toward the truth he had been so desperate to uncover that he had been willing to destroy his entire life to find it. The automatic doors slid open, and Ethan stepped inside, not knowing if he was walking toward redemption or ruin, but knowing with terrible certainty that he deserved whatever was coming. The ICU waiting room was too bright, fluorescent lights humming overhead like accusatory witnesses. Ethan saw them before they saw him. Caroline and Jake sat on opposite sides of the room, Jennifer pacing between them, all three of them wearing expressions of worry that had nothing to do with him and everything to do with the woman fighting for her life, behind the heavy double doors, marked staff only. Then Jennifer looked up, saw Ethan standing in the doorway, and her face crumpled with relief and confusion, and something that might have been anger. "Ethan," she said, crossing the room to pull him into a hug that felt more like an anchor than comfort. "Where were you really? Why did you lie about Austin?" Before Ethan could answer, Caroline stood up. The look she gave him could have frozen fire. It was not anger exactly, not yet. It was something colder and more final. Disappointment. Betrayal. The depth of trust rendered visible in the set of her jaw and the way her hands clenched at her sides. Jake remained seated, watching Ethan with an expression that was harder to read. Hurt, definitely. But also something that looked like pity. Your mother is stable for now, Jennifer said, pulling back from the hug. They are running tests. The doctor will come talk to us soon. She looked between Ethan and Caroline, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. What is going on? Why do you both look like that? Caroline's first words were quiet but devastating. Your brother was spying on us at the concert. He has been lying about a work conference. He was there, Ethan. At the Coldplay show. Watching us. Jennifer's face went through several transformations. Confusion, disbelief, then a dawning horror as she processed what Caroline was saying. You were at the concert? You told me you were going to Austin for work. You have been planning this, haven't you? This whole thing with the tickets was a setup. I can explain, Ethan started, but Jennifer cut him off with a gesture that was pure fury. Explain what? That you hired a private investigator? That you have been documenting Caroline and Jake like they are suspects in some crime? That you have been planning this surveillance operation for weeks while pretending everything was fine? She stepped back from him, disgust clear on her face. Marcus, what is wrong with you? The use of his full name from Jennifer, who never called him anything but Ethan or little brother, hit like a slap. I thought. Ethan tried again, his voice breaking. I thought they were. Do not, Caroline said, her voice sharp enough to cut. Do not you dare finish that sentence. Not here. Not now. Your mother is in there fighting for her life, and you are going to make this about your paranoid delusions? They are not delusions, Ethan said, hating how weak he sounded, how desperate. I saw the texts. I read your journal. You wrote about Dee making you feel alive, about me being safe and predictable. What was I supposed to think? Caroline's laugh was bitter and airless. You read my journal. You went through my private thoughts without permission and used them as evidence against me. Do you hear yourself? Do you understand how completely you have violated my trust? Jake finally spoke, his voice tired. Man, she was not writing about me. Dee did not mean Derek. But you were so convinced, so sure we were betraying you, that you never stopped to ask. You never talked to Caroline. You never came to me. You just decided we were guilty and built your case. Then what did Dee mean? Ethan demanded, looking at Caroline. If it was not about Jake, what were you writing about? Caroline shook her head, tears streaming down her face now. I cannot do this right now. Your mother is in the ICU. We're in a hospital. This conversation, this whole disaster, it can wait. But Ethan, when this is over, when we know your mom is going to be okay, we are done. I cannot be married to someone who trusts surveillance more than he trusts me. The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Done. She had said done. Not we need to talk, or we need counseling, or we need time. Done. Past tense. Finished. Over. No, Ethan said, stepping toward her. Caroline, please. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. But please do not make decisions right now. Let me explain. Let me fix this. You cannot fix this, Caroline said, backing away from him. You destroyed this. You took our marriage, and you tested it like it was some kind of experiment, like I was a variable you needed to control. She put her hand on her stomach in a gesture that Ethan did not understand, protective and instinctive. I cannot trust you to be what I need you to be. Before Ethan could ask what she meant by that gesture, by that statement about what she needed him to be, a doctor emerged from the double doors. Family of Margaret Ripley, she said, and they all turned, the personal crisis momentarily suspended by the medical one. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and tired shoulders, gestured for them to sit. Your mother had an ischemic stroke, she explained. We have stabilized her, but the next 48 hours are critical. She is awake and asking for her children. You can see her, but only 2 at a time, and keep it brief. She needs to rest. Jennifer and Ethan went first. Their mother looked small in the hospital bed, diminished in a way that made Ethan's throat close up. She had been larger than life in his memories, the villain of his childhood, the woman whose betrayal had shaped every relationship he had ever had. But lying there with machines beeping steadily around her, she just looked like someone's sick mother. Like his sick mother. "Mom," Jennifer said, taking her hand. "We're here. You are going to be okay." Margaret's eyes opened, focused on Jennifer first, then moved to Ethan. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "What did you do? I can see it on your face. What did you do, baby?" Ethan felt Jennifer stiffen beside him, confused about how their mother could possibly know something was wrong beyond her own medical crisis. But Margaret had always been able to read Ethan, had always seen through his masks to the fear underneath. "I messed up," he said, his voice cracking. "I messed up really badly, Mom." "Did you hurt that girl?" Margaret asked. "The one who loves you more than you love yourself? Did you let my mistakes become yours?" Ethan could not speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face, and Margaret closed her eyes like she was absorbing a pain that went beyond physical. Jennifer stepped out to give them privacy, sensing this was a conversation that needed to happen without witnesses. "I never told you the whole truth," Margaret said once they were alone. "About your father and me. About why I did what I did." "It does not matter," Ethan said. "What you did, what Dad did, it is in the past. It matters if it is destroying your present," Margaret countered. "Your father, Ethan. He was not the hero you thought he was. He had 3 affairs before mine. 3 women over 7 years. I stayed quiet. I tried to be enough. I twisted myself into knots trying to make him happy, trying to keep our family together. And then I broke. My affair with your uncle was wrong, but it was not the first betrayal in our marriage. You only saw mine because your father made sure that is all you would see." Ethan felt the foundation of his entire worldview cracking. "What are you saying?" "I am saying you built your life around the wrong lesson," Margaret said. "You learned that love leads to betrayal. But what you should have learned is that fear leads to betrayal. Your father's fear of being alone led him to cheat. My fear of losing him led me to accept it until I could not anymore. And now your fear is going to cost you Caroline unless you stop running the same pattern." "She does not want me anymore," Ethan said. "She said we are done." Margaret's grip on his hand was surprisingly strong for someone who had just had a stroke. "Then you fight for her. Not by controlling her or testing her or spying on her. You fight by being honest. By being vulnerable. By trusting her even when it terrifies you. That beautiful girl out there is carrying your baby, Ethan. Do not let your fear take that away from both of you." Ethan's world tilted. "What?" "She is pregnant," Margaret said. "About 3 months, if I had to guess from the way she is carrying herself." "You did not know?" Ethan shook his head, unable to form words. Caroline was pregnant. That is what Dee meant in the journal entry. Decision. The decision to tell him about the baby. She had been scared, unsure, trying to figure out how to share this news with a husband who apparently trusted surveillance equipment more than he trusted her. And Ethan had been so busy looking for betrayal that he had missed the most important thing happening in his life. "Go talk to her," Margaret said. "Go fix this before it is too late. And Ethan, if you cannot do it for yourself, do it for that child. Break the cycle. Be better than your father and I were." Ethan stumbled out of the room, his mind reeling. Jennifer was waiting outside. "Go home," she said coldly. "You should not be here right now. You should be figuring out how to save your marriage, not hovering around a hospital making everything worse." "But Mom is stable and I am here," Jennifer interrupted. "Caroline and Jake do not want to see you right now. You have done enough damage for one night. So go home, Ethan. Go home and figure out who you want to be. Because the person you are right now, I do not recognize him." Ethan walked past the waiting room where Caroline and Jake sat together, not touching, but clearly united in their anger and disappointment. Neither of them looked at him. He made it to his car before the breakdown hit, before he slumped over the steering wheel and sobbed with the kind of desperation that came from knowing you had destroyed everything that mattered and might not get the chance to make it right. His phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "That night at the concert, Caroline showed me the ultrasound. She got it that morning. She was going to tell you after the show, with my help. That is what you saw, man. Us celebrating your kid. That is what you turned into evidence of an affair." Ethan read the text 3 times, each word a hammer blow. He had accused his pregnant wife of cheating. He had surveilled his best friend who was helping plan a surprise baby announcement. He had turned love into suspicion and joy into evidence and trust into a test that everyone had passed except him. And now Caroline said they were done. Now his sister would not look at him. Now his mother was in a hospital bed telling him he had learned the wrong lessons from her mistakes. Now Ethan sat alone in a parking lot with the wreckage of his life surrounding him, wondering if a man who destroys everything he touches out of fear deserves a second chance, or if some mistakes are too big to be forgiven. Dawn broke gray and cold over Seattle, light filtering through the hospital parking garage where Ethan had spent the night in his car, unable to face the empty apartment, unable to sleep, replaying every moment of his catastrophic failure on an endless loop. His phone was dead. His body ached. His eyes burned from crying and from staring at nothing for hours. At 6 in the morning, he finally moved, driving home to shower and charge his phone, moving through the motions of basic self-care like a ghost haunting his own life. The apartment felt wrong without Caroline in it. Her coffee mug still sat in the sink from yesterday morning. Her jacket hung on the hook by the door. The nursery they had not started building yet existed as a spare room full of his gaming equipment and her storage boxes, completely unaware that it was supposed to become something else, somewhere a child would sleep while her parents figured out if they could stay married. Ethan plugged in his phone and watched the messages load. Nothing from Caroline. 3 texts from Jennifer with updates about their mother. Margaret was stable, awake, asking about him. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Jennifer's texts were informational, devoid of warmth, the words of someone fulfilling an obligation rather than talking to a brother she loved. There was one more message from Dr. Chin, his therapist. Ethan, Jennifer called me. I have a 7 a.m. opening this morning if you need it. I think you need it. Ethan showed up at Dr. Chen's office at 6:50, unshowered, wearing the same clothes from the concert, looking like exactly what he was. A man in crisis. A man who had orchestrated his own destruction with surgical precision and now stood in the rubble wondering how it had come to this. Dr. Chen did not waste time with pleasantries. Tell me what happened. Ethan told him everything. The surveillance, the concert, his mother's stroke, the moment Caroline said they were done. The pregnancy he had not known about. The journal entry he had misread. The best friend he had suspected of betrayal who had actually been helping plan a surprise. Every word felt like a confession, and Dr. Chen listened without interrupting, his expression neutral but his eyes sad. When Ethan finished, Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that broke Ethan completely. What are you going to do now? I don't know, Ethan said. Caroline won't talk to me. Jennifer is disgusted with me. Jake probably never wants to see me again. I destroyed everything trying to protect myself from being destroyed. Here is what I know about you, Ethan, Dr. Chen said, leaning forward. You are a man who has spent 30 years running from your childhood trauma instead of healing it. You have been so afraid of becoming your father, the oblivious husband, that you became him in a different way. Controlling, suspicious, unable to trust. Your father's fear made him cheat. Your fear made you destroy the thing you were trying to protect. I know, Ethan whispered. I know that now. Knowing is not enough, Dr. Chen said. You cannot think your way out of this. You have to act. But not the way you have been acting, trying to control outcomes and test loyalties and gather evidence. You have to act with vulnerability, with honesty, with a willingness to surrender control and accept whatever consequences come. What if she never forgives me? What if I have lost her forever? Then you have lost her, Dr. Chen said simply. And you will have to live with that. But Ethan, you cannot fix this alone. You cannot make Caroline forgive you or Jake trust you again or Jennifer stop being angry. What you can do is tell them the truth. Not the defensive truth where you explain why you did what you did. The real truth. That you were terrified and broken and you hurt them because you could not face your own fear. Hey, before we go further, can I ask you something? Why haven't you subscribed yet? Don't break my heart like that. This story needs you to stay. Tap that button. Join us on this journey. Ethan left Dr. Chen's office at 8 in the morning with a plan that terrified him more than anything he had done so far. He went home, opened his laptop, and started writing. Not a text message. Not an email. A letter. 10 pages of complete honesty, every terrible thought and fear and insecurity that had led him to this moment. He wrote about his mother's affair, about finding her crying in the kitchen, about the uncle who stopped coming to Thanksgiving. He wrote about the journal entry he had misread, about how D had not meant Derek but decision, about the pregnancy test receipt he had found and convinced himself was for Caroline's best friend Amanda instead of for Caroline herself. He wrote about the private investigator who had found nothing because there was nothing to find. He wrote about the surveillance folder on his computer, the screenshots and photos and reports that added up to a fiction he had constructed from fragments of truth. He wrote about sitting in section 214 with binoculars, watching his wife cry in his best friend's arms, and how he had been so sure he was right that he had not stopped to question what he was actually seeing. He wrote about the moment in the hospital parking lot when Jake had texted him about the ultrasound, about realizing that Caroline had been showing Jake a picture of their baby, that she had been planning to tell Ethan after the concert, that the whole romantic gesture he had planned months ago had been co-opted into a baby announcement that he had destroyed with his paranoia. By the time Ethan finished, it was almost noon. He printed 3 copies of the letter. One for Caroline, one for Jake, one for Jennifer. Then he called Jennifer. "I need you to do me a favor," he said when she answered. "I know you are angry with me. You have every right to be. But I need you to gather Caroline and Jake at the hospital chapel in an hour. Tell them I am going to explain everything and then they can decide what happens next." Jennifer was quiet. "Then, Ethan, if you hurt Caroline more than you already have." "I won't," Ethan said. "I am done hurting people. I am done trying to control outcomes. I am just going to tell the truth and let them decide if I deserve another chance." An hour later, Ethan walked into the hospital chapel, a small quiet room with wooden pews and stained glass that filtered the gray afternoon light into something almost beautiful. Caroline, Jake, and Jennifer sat in the front row, as far from each other as possible, a physical representation of how much damage Ethan had done to their relationships. Ethan handed each of them a letter. "Please read this," he said, his voice steady despite his shaking hands. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking for anything except for you to understand why I did what I did. And then I will accept whatever you decide." The next 15 minutes were the longest of Ethan's life. He sat in the back pew and watched them read, watched their faces cycle through anger and sadness and frustration and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of understanding. Caroline finished first, wiping tears from her eyes. Jake finished second, his jaw clenched tight. Jennifer finished last, and when she looked up at Ethan, her expression was complicated in a way that gave him the smallest spark of hope. Jake spoke first. "Man, this is so messed up. You thought I would do that to you? After 15 years? His voice cracked. "But I read about your dad, about what your mom told you last night. I am trying to understand. It does not make it okay, but I am trying." "It was not fair of me to put my trauma on you," Ethan said. "You have never given me a reason not to trust you. I did that all on my own." "You hired a private investigator," Jake said. "You spent thousands of dollars trying to catch us doing something we were not doing. That is not just trauma, Ethan. That is a choice you made over and over again." "You are right," Ethan said. "I chose paranoia over trust. I chose control over communication. I chose to destroy us rather than risk being destroyed. And I am sorry. I am so deeply sorry." Caroline spoke next, her voice steady but cold. "I am pregnant with your child. That does not mean we are okay. That does not mean I forgive you. But it means I am willing to try if you do the work. Real therapy, not just going through the motions. Marriage counseling. Individual counseling. And you rebuild trust by being trustworthy, not by testing me." She paused, and Ethan held his breath. "I loved your romantic gesture, Ethan. Jake showed me the videos of what you had planned. The flash mob, the string quartet, the vow renewal at the concert. It was beautiful. And I hate that you ruined it by turning it into a surveillance operation. We have 7 months before this baby comes. 7 months to figure out if we can be parents together. What are you saying?" Ethan asked, afraid to hope. I am saying ask me again in 6 months, Caroline said. If you have done the work, if you have proven yourself, I will say yes to trying again. Until then, we are married but separated. You sleep in the guest room. You come to every therapy appointment. You prove that you trust me, not by saying it, but by living it. It was not the romantic reconciliation Ethan had hoped for, but it was more than he deserved. It was a chance. A narrow, conditional, probationary chance, but a chance nonetheless. I will do whatever it takes, he said. I promise. Do not make promises you cannot keep, Caroline said. Just show up. Every day. That is all I am asking. Show up and do the work. Jake stood up, walked over to Ethan. I need time, man. But we are going to be in each other's lives because of Caroline and the baby. So we figure this out slowly. Coffee next month, maybe. See where we are. He extended his hand. Ethan took it, felt the firmness of Jake's grip, the complicated mix of hurt and hope in that gesture. Thank you, Ethan said. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Jennifer was last. She hugged Ethan, hard and brief. Mom wants to see you, she said. She has something else she needs to tell you. Something about Dad that I think will help you understand that you do not have to repeat their mistakes. 3 days later, Margaret was discharged from the hospital, weak but recovering. As Ethan wheeled her out to Jennifer's car, she said, You know what breaks the cycle, baby? Not perfection. Accountability. You did that in that chapel. You owned what you did. Now keep doing it. It was the closest she had ever come to saying she was proud of him, and Ethan held on to those words like a lifeline as he drove back to the apartment he was now sharing with a wife who was sleeping in their bedroom while he took the guest room. Separated by walls and broken trust, but connected by a child neither of them had planned but both of them wanted. 6 months passed in a careful dance of rebuilding, each day a small test that Ethan chose to meet with honesty instead of suspicion. Twice-weekly sessions with Dr. Chin became the architecture of his healing, unpacking 30 years of trauma piece by piece until he could finally see the pattern clearly. His mother's affair had not taught him about betrayal. It had taught him about fear, and fear left unchecked became the very thing it tried to prevent. Weekly marriage counseling with Caroline was harder, sessions where they sat across from a therapist named Dr. Patel and excavated the damage Ethan had done, the trust he had broken, the surveillance he had chosen over communication. Ethan deleted the folder on his computer, every screenshot and photo and private investigator report, and did it in front of Caroline during one of their sessions so she could witness the symbolic destruction of his need for control. He gave her complete access to his phone, his location, his email, everything, and she had looked at him with an expression that was equal parts sadness and hope. I do not want to monitor you, Ethan, she had said. That is what you did to me. I want you to be trustworthy without me having to check. So Ethan learned what trustworthy looked like in practice. It looked like coming home when he said he would. It looked like being transparent about his feelings instead of letting them fester into suspicion. It looked like asking questions instead of making assumptions. When Caroline came home late from work 3 months into their separation, Ethan's first instinct was the old instinct, the one that wanted to check her phone and smell her clothes and look for evidence. Instead, he asked, How was your day? Rough? Exhausting, Caroline had said, collapsing on the couch. The product launch is a disaster. I am going to be working late all next week. Then she had looked at him with eyes that were testing him right back, waiting to see if he would spiral, if he would demand proof or explanations or surveillance. That sounds stressful, Ethan had said. What can I do to help? Do you need me to pick up dinner this week so you have one less thing to worry about? The relief on Caroline's face had been worth more than any evidence folder. That would be amazing, she had said. Thank you for not making this harder than it already is. The baby grew. Caroline was 7 months pregnant now, her body transforming in ways that made Ethan's breath catch every time he saw her. They had learned they were having a girl during the anatomy scan, and Caroline had reached for Ethan's hand during that moment, the first time she had initiated physical contact since the hospital chapel. It had lasted maybe 30 seconds before she pulled away, but it was something. It was progress. Ethan attended every prenatal appointment, took notes, asked questions, learned about contractions and dilation and what to pack in the hospital bag. He did not take photos without asking first. He did not post on social media without Caroline's approval. He learned that love was not about grand gestures or romantic surprises. It was about respecting boundaries and showing up consistently and proving through action that he had changed. The friendship with Jake was slower to rebuild, more tentative. They met for coffee once a month, conversations that started awkward and gradually became easier. By month 4, they were laughing again, carefully but genuinely. Jake admitted during one of their meetings that he had almost ended the friendship completely. "Watching you actually change, not just promise to," Jake had said, stirring his coffee absently. "I do not know, man. It means something. Most people just say they will do better. You are actually doing it." They were not back to who they were before, but they were building something new, something that felt stronger because it was chosen rather than assumed. Jake agreed to be the godfather, a decision that had made Caroline cry with relief because she had been afraid Ethan's paranoia had destroyed that possibility forever. Jennifer softened gradually, though she remained protective of Caroline in a way that Ethan respected. She came over for dinner once a week, ostensibly to check on her pregnant sister-in-law, but really to monitor Ethan's progress, to make sure he was keeping his promises. By month 5, she started addressing him as little brother again instead of just Ethan, and he took that as the forgiveness it was. In a pivotal therapy session during the 6th month, Dr. Chen asked Ethan the question that had been circling their work together since the beginning. What would happen if you just trusted her completely? Not because you had evidence, not because you had tested her, but just because you chose to. Ethan had sat with that question for a long time before answering. "I think I would be terrified. But I think I would also be free." "Trust is not the absence of fear," Dr. Chen had said. "It is jumping without knowing if there is a net. You have been testing the net's strength for 6 months. At some point, you have to jump." The 6-month anniversary of the hospital chapel scene arrived on a Friday. Ethan asked Caroline to dinner, not at home, but at the restaurant where they had their first date 9 years ago. She agreed to come, and Ethan spent the entire day beforehand trying not to spiral, trying not to plan every word, trying to just be present and honest and willing to accept whatever she decided. Caroline was 8 weeks away from her due date now, beautiful and tired and cautiously optimistic about their future. They ordered the same meals they had ordered on their first date, and Ethan watched her across the table, memorizing the way the candlelight caught her face, the way she touched her stomach absently, the way she looked at him with something that was not quite trust, but was moving in that direction. "I am not going to propose tonight," Ethan said, and Caroline looked confused. "Because I realized I have been treating our marriage like a transaction. Like if I do enough right things, I earn you back. But that is still control. So instead, I am just going to tell you the truth. I love you. I trust you. And whatever you decide about us, I will respect it. Even if it breaks me." Caroline set down her fork, tears welling in her eyes. "I decided 3 months ago that I wanted to try again. Really try. But I needed to see if you would keep going even without a reward, without knowing the outcome. You did." She reached into her purse and pulled out something that made Ethan's heart stop. The ring. The vow renewal ring that Jake had been supposed to give her at the concert. The one that had been part of the romantic gesture Ethan had destroyed with his paranoia. "You never actually gave me this," Caroline said. "So maybe you give it to me now? And we start over?" Ethan's hands shook as he took the ring, as he slid it onto Caroline's finger where it sat next to her wedding band, a symbol of second chances and hard-won trust. It fit perfectly, just like it had when he first proposed 8 years ago, but it meant something different now. Not a promise of perfection, but a commitment to keep trying, to keep showing up, to keep choosing vulnerability over control. They did not kiss dramatically. They just sat there, holding hands across the table, crying quietly, both of them aware of how close they had come to losing everything. "Thank you," Ethan said. "Thank you for giving me another chance when I did not deserve it." "You still have to keep doing the work," Caroline said, but she was smiling now, genuine and warm. "Therapy continues. Honesty continues. Trust continues. This ring is not the end of probation. It is the beginning of rebuilding." "I know," Ethan said. "I will keep showing up. Every day. I promise." 2 months later, Their daughter was born at 3:47 in the morning. Ethan was there, holding Caroline's hand, coaching her breathing, being exactly where he needed to be in exactly the way she needed him. When the doctor placed their daughter on Caroline's chest, Ethan watched his wife's face transform with pure love, and he understood with sudden clarity that this was what trust looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to love despite it. Caroline looked at him, exhausted and radiant and more beautiful than he had ever seen her. What should we name her? The question was an invitation, a partnership, a new beginning. They had discussed names but never decided, both of them waiting for this moment to know what felt right. Hope, Ethan said. Her name is Hope. Caroline smiled through tears. Hope Ripley. It is perfect. Not subtle, but perfect. Jake arrived an hour later, bringing flowers and terrible hospital coffee and a stuffed animal that was comically oversized. He held Hope with the careful reverence of someone who understood what a miracle this was, what they had all almost lost. She is beautiful, man. She looks just like Caroline, thank God. Jennifer came with their mother, who was fully recovered now, walking slowly but steadily. Margaret held her granddaughter and whispered something to the baby that Ethan could not hear, something that made her smile with the kind of peace that came from knowing the cycle had finally been broken. Listen, if you are still with us at this point in the story, you are family now. If you have not subscribed yet, do it. Not for me, but because you deserve to be part of a community that believes in second chances, in redemption, in the hard work of becoming better. Hit that button. 3 days later, they brought Hope home. Ethan had spent the previous month transforming his gaming room into a nursery, painting walls in soft yellow, assembling the crib that Caroline watched him build from the doorway, not commenting but observing the way he carefully followed instructions. The way he asked for help when he needed it instead of pretending he had everything under control. That first night home, Ethan did the 3 a.m. feeding while Caroline slept, holding his daughter in the rocking chair they had picked out together, watching her tiny face in the dim light of the nursery. You almost did not get to have this, he told Hope quietly. Your dad almost destroyed everything because he was too scared to trust that good things could stay good. But your mom gave him another chance. And your uncle Jake forgave him. And your Aunt Jennifer stopped being disappointed in him. And your grandmother taught him that you get to choose which patterns you repeat and which ones you break. Hope yawned, a tiny perfect motion that made Ethan's chest ache with love so fierce it was almost frightening. He understood now why Caroline had written about feeling alive in her journal. This was what alive felt like. Not the absence of fear or pain or uncertainty, but the presence of something worth being afraid for, worth fighting for, worth changing for. Caroline appeared in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. You are supposed to be sleeping, Ethan said. Could not, Caroline said, coming to sit on the arm of the rocking chair. Just wanted to see you two together. She put her hand on Ethan's shoulder, and it was not tentative anymore. It was sure. We are going to be okay, she said. I really think we are going to be okay. Ethan looked up at his wife, at the woman who had every reason to leave him and had chosen to stay, had chosen to rebuild, had chosen to believe that people could change if they were willing to do the work. I love you, he said. I trust you. And I am so grateful you trusted me enough to let me be here. Caroline kissed the top of his head. Just keep showing up, Ethan. That is all I have ever wanted. Just keep showing up. And he did. 6 months after Hope was born, Ethan woke to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window and Caroline, still asleep beside him. Not in the guest room anymore. Not separated by walls and broken trust. Together, in their bed, the way married people were supposed to sleep. It had taken another 4 months after Hope's birth for Caroline to invite him back, for months of continued therapy and demonstrated trust and small moments of reconnection that added up to something resembling their old intimacy but deeper, more intentional, earned rather than assumed. Hope made small noises through the baby monitor, the gurgling sounds that meant she was awake but not yet crying, content to babble to herself in the soft yellow nursery. Ethan slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake Caroline, and padded down the hall to his daughter. She was standing in her crib, holding the rails, when he entered, and her face lit up with a smile that made everything he had been through worth it. Every moment of fear, every therapy session, every painful conversation, all of it was worth this smile. "Good morning, Hope," Ethan whispered, lifting her out. "Ready for breakfast?" The morning routine had become sacred. Ethan changed her diaper, made her bottle, sat with her in the rocking chair while she drank, watching the city wake up through the nursery window. Caroline joined them 20 minutes later, still in pajamas, hair messy in a way that Ethan found impossibly beautiful. "Morning," she said, kissing Hope's head and then, casually, naturally, kissing Ethan's cheek. The casual affection still made his heart skip, still felt like the gift it was. They had breakfast together, the three of them, Hope in her high chair making a spectacular mess of pureed sweet potato, while Caroline told Ethan about a work meeting she had later, and Ethan told her about the code review he was dreading. Normal conversation. Domestic and simple, and exactly what Ethan had almost destroyed with his paranoia. Jake was coming over that afternoon. The monthly coffee meetups had evolved into weekly dinners, and then into spontaneous hangouts, and now Jake was Uncle Jake to Hope, a fixture in their rebuilt life. The awkwardness had faded, replaced by something that felt like their old friendship, but more honest, more willing to acknowledge hurt and work through it rather than pretending everything was always fine. When Jake arrived at 2, he brought his new girlfriend, a woman named Sarah who worked in physical therapy and who laughed easily and who seemed genuinely delighted by Hope's chubby-cheeked enthusiasm for everything. "This is the famous Hope," Sarah said, taking the baby when Hope reached for her with grabby hands. "I have heard so much about you, little one." They spent the afternoon in the living room, talking and laughing while Hope played on her mat, occasionally demanding attention from whichever adult was closest. At one point, Jake pulled Ethan aside while Caroline and Sarah were in the kitchen making coffee. "How are you doing?" he asked. Really good," Ethan said, and he meant it. "Therapy is still hard. Some days I still feel that old fear trying to creep back in. But I am learning to recognize it, to talk about it instead of acting on it. Caroline and I are in a good place. Better than good, actually." "I am proud of you, man," Jake said. "I know that probably sounds weird coming from me, but I am. You could have stayed broken. You chose to fix yourself instead. That takes guts." "Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you liked this story? Has it touched you in some way? If it has, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, what this story meant to you. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. Your support means everything. It helps me keep telling stories that matter." Jennifer visited every Sunday, a tradition that had started when Hope was born and had continued because Jennifer had fallen completely in love with her niece. She arrived that evening with takeout from the Thai place they all loved and a new outfit for Hope that was covered in tiny elephants. Aunt Jennifer's gift-giving was getting out of control, Caroline teased, but she was smiling as she said it, grateful for the family that had almost fractured, but had instead found a way to heal. Over dinner, Margaret called. She was fully recovered now, back to her book club and her volunteer work and her weekly phone calls with her children. "How is my granddaughter?" she asked, and Ethan put her on speaker so everyone could participate in the conversation. Hope babbled enthusiastically at the phone, and Margaret laughed with pure joy. "Tell her grandma loves her and we'll see her next weekend." After everyone left and Hope was asleep and the apartment was quiet, Ethan and Caroline sat on the couch together, her feet in his lap, while he massaged them absently. "This is nice," Caroline said. "This life we have built. I almost did not think we would get here." "I almost made sure we did not," Ethan said. "Every day I am grateful you gave me the chance to prove I could change." Caroline looked at him seriously. "You know what made the difference? You did not just promise to change. You actually did the work. You went to therapy twice a week for 6 months. You gave me space when I needed it. You showed up for every prenatal appointment, every diaper change, every 3 a.m. feeding. You proved it with actions, not words." "I learned that from you," Ethan said. "You could have left. You had every reason to. But you stayed and you made me earn my way back, and that was the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." The therapy continued, though less frequently now. Once a week individual sessions with Dr. Chen, twice-monthly couples counseling with Dr. Patel. Ethan had learned that healing was not a destination but a practice, something you had to choose every day. Some days were easier than others. There were still moments when the old fear crept in, when Caroline came home late or when her phone buzzed, and Ethan felt that familiar twist in his stomach. But now he had tools. He could recognize the fear, name it, talk about it. "I am feeling insecure right now," he would tell Caroline. "Not because you did anything wrong, but because my brain is trying to run the old pattern. Can we talk about it?" And Caroline would talk with him, patient and honest, helping him work through the fear without enabling it. That balance, that willingness to support without coddling, had been crucial to Ethan's healing. She held him accountable while also showing him grace, and that combination had saved them both. 3 weeks later was the anniversary of the concert, the night everything had fallen apart and started to come back together. Ethan and Caroline had talked about whether to acknowledge it or let it pass quietly. In the end, they decided to reclaim it, to turn the worst night of their marriage into something new. They got a babysitter, Jennifer, who was delighted to have hope for the evening, and they went to see Qley again. Different venue this time, a smaller theater, and they sat together in the middle section, Ethan's arm around Caroline's shoulders, both of them crying during Fix You for completely different reasons than last year. "This is what I wanted to give you," Ethan whispered during the song. "This moment. This memory. Not surveillance or suspicion, just us together, enjoying something beautiful." "You are giving it to me now," Caroline said. "That is what matters. Not the gesture you planned last year, but the man you have become this year." After the concert, they walked through the city, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. They stopped for ice cream even though it was late, sat on a bench overlooking the water, and Caroline said something that made Ethan's throat tight with emotion. "I am happy, Ethan. Right now, in this moment, with you, I am genuinely happy. And I did not think I would be able to say that 6 months ago." "I am happy too," Ethan said. "Happier than I have ever been, actually. Because this is not the false happiness of thinking everything is perfect. This is the real happiness of knowing we survived something terrible and came out stronger." They got home after midnight, relieved Jennifer of babysitting duties, and checked on Hope, who was sleeping peacefully in her crib. Ethan stood in the doorway of the nursery, Caroline beside him, and felt a peace so profound it was almost overwhelming. "This is what I almost lost," he thought. "This perfect, ordinary, beautiful life. Because I was too afraid to trust that it was real." The following weekend, they had Hope's christening. A small ceremony at a church neither of them attended regularly, but that felt right for the occasion. Jake stood as godfather, holding Hope with practiced ease now, promising to guide her spiritually and support her always. Jennifer stood as godmother, tears streaming down her face as she made her vows. Margaret sat in the front row, healthy and whole, watching her family come together in a way that redeemed some of the pain she had caused years ago. After the ceremony, they took a photo. All of them together. Ethan, Caroline, Hope, Jake, Jennifer, Margaret. Not a perfect family, but a real one. A family that had been fractured by fear and mistrust and had chosen to heal instead of staying broken. Ethan looked at that photo later that night and saw not just faces, but a testament to the power of accountability, of forgiveness, of doing the hard work of becoming better. "Before I let you go, I want to thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. If it moved you, if it made you think differently about trust or fear or second chances, please share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Post it where others can find it. Stories like this only matter if they are shared. And if you have not already, subscribe, because there are more stories coming, more journeys of people who mess up and find their way back, and I want you to be here for all of them." Ethan Ripley never forgot the night he tested his wife's loyalty and failed spectacularly. But he also never forgot the night he chose to stop testing and start trusting, the night he deleted his evidence folder and wrote a letter of complete honesty, the night he surrendered control and let himself be vulnerable. That night had saved his life, his marriage, his friendship, and his chance at being the father his daughter deserved. Hope's first birthday arrived with a kind of chaos that only a 1-year-old could generate. Cake everywhere, presents scattered across the living room, family and friends packed into their apartment celebrating a little girl who had no idea she was the miracle that had saved them all. Ethan stood in the kitchen, watching Caroline laugh at something Jake said while Hope smashed her face into her birthday cake, and he felt that old fear try to surface one more time. But this time, instead of feeding it, Ethan just smiled. He walked over to his wife, kissed the top of her head, and said, "I love you. Thank you for not giving up on me." Caroline turned, cake frosting somehow on her cheek, and smiled back. "Thank you for becoming someone worth not giving up on." Sometimes the person who walked away simply made space for the life you deserved all along. But sometimes, the person who stayed and made you work for it gave you something even better. A chance to become who you were always meant to be. A chance to break the cycle. A chance to choose love over fear, trust over control, vulnerability over protection. Ethan had taken that chance. And it had given him everything. The end.